Right. Good morning. I appreciate you taking time today to join us. My name is Marty Shigarek, and my colleague Deb Cullen today was unable to make this session, but I wanted to make sure that we put her name and we have to have her email address in here as well. I'm going to start off by actually stopping the share here and actually going to tool that we've found very useful in our work since March, since COVID hit and we've gone into this hibernation mode. I'm going to stop this share and I am going to share a different screen for you. And I want to get some personal information from you, some feedback. So let's see here, exit that. All right, here we go. Screen. All right, so what we have here is a tool, and in this session, I'm going to share with you, this is a tool that we use, but there are similar ones out there, and at Southern Regional Education Board and Tech Centers at Work, we don't advocate for a tool. There's so many out there, I think we all agree that it's overwhelming, and it really comes down to personal usage. You know, do you like this tool over that tool? And it also has a lot to do with what is available within the district or state. Are there any requirements? So this is called Menti.com, and there are other similar tools out there. The reason I'm going to share it with you is this has been one of the most effective tools that we've used, regardless of face-to-face, hybrid, 100% virtual, in terms of highly effective questioning. So it's almost taking a step back to just some of the fundamentals. And on this initial screen here, you're going to see these are the different types of questions that you can use just on this. It's a free app. It works well. It takes less than 5 minutes. If you do a cost benefit analysis, it takes less than 5 minutes to really learn. But what I like about it is the variety of different types of questioning templates that they have built. And they also have some quiz competition. And I know other softwares have this tool. This is just something we've been sharing with teachers across Pennsylvania to get them jump started. And then it also has content slides. So I'm going to go to the next slide here and give you an opportunity to check out some of the variety of questions. So if you go to Menti.com, where you're at, and you can enter this code, you can rank these workplace attributes in order of importance. So what I like about this is it provides the instructor with a lot of different question types where I don't actually have to create that template. It's done. So if I have a ranking question or if a scaling question, obviously open-ended and multiple choice are common, but if you want to go ahead and add into this, and what we most like about it is it's instantaneous feedback. So I'm sure you're all aware, we're dealing since March, working across Pennsylvania, we're dealing with such a variety. Every school or center that we work with is unique in terms of where teachers are at, what tools they can use, where they're at in the process, did they start virtual, go hybrid, et cetera. So what we've really done is taken a step back and looked at what are some common tools and strategies that we can use that optimize the time we have. Because as you know, I have teachers that have 45 minutes with kids synchronously. I have teachers that have 2 hours with them. It varies. So it's almost as if we're going to take a step back and come up with a toolkit here or strategies and methods that we can use regardless of where we're at. So if we are face-to-face, I was yesterday at Fayette County Career Center working with them, and they're face-to-face. I'm working with Lackawanna, and they're going to be virtual. So, and then there's hybrid in between. So you can start to see, I like this because students can see instantaneous results. And that's been a big gap for a lot of teachers is how can I check for understanding? What tool out there allows me to question students, get instantaneous feedback? And what I love about this tool, and I'm sure it's the same with all tools, right? You can download the PDF results, or you can keep it open and run the same types of questions all day in different classes. And so in terms of learning, it's free, less than 5 minutes to learn, and it provides the teacher with an option of a variety of slides here. So if you go to the next one, and you can sequence them. So I'm going to go to another slide here. This one, are you satisfied with the following? This one has slider bars. And so again, I think we all agree that when we're in this virtual world, hybrid, face-to-face, regardless, the highly effective, the types of questions we ask, I need freedom. I need to be able to look at my standards and type in information, and the teacher needs to get instantaneous feedback. And that's what I really like about this. And you can see, I just threw in a couple questions about workforce development. But again, these questions are questions that I could use to align to the Pennsylvania Work and Career Readiness Standards. I'm a big fan of those standards. I share your state standards with other states. I think that's a great way to engage students and try to get them to engage virtually, and how important it is that they really do engage in this process. Because as we know, in business and industry, they're dealing with this in real time. And we all know that communication skills are critical for a job. But I think what we're seeing today is that you got to have the virtual skills. You've got to be able to work digitally, because you may go work for my brother's company, Stanley Steamer, and you may be remote, or you might be hybrid where you're in work one day and out the other day. So again, you're going to hear me echo that throughout this presentation today, that we're really trying to simulate the workplace for kids and what they're going to go into. So the types of tools and the types of techniques, we're going to look at what is being done in industry as well as post-secondary. There's been a lot of great research. As we all know, post-secondary institutions have done a lot of work with virtual learning, and there's a lot of things that we can glean from that. So as you can see, you get your nice results. I can save this, like I said, in a PDF, or I can turn around and keep it open and run it with my next period class and gather that. So I am going to shift now back to my presentation. The first thing I want to share with you, though, is an action agenda. So I'm actually going to put this action agenda into the chat box. And I think you can see, everybody can see this. So what I've created, I'll put this in the chat box with you guys, is that we take action agendas at SREB. So when we're working virtually, we're creating a hot link agenda that has all those tools in it and links and documents. What we found, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is redundancy is critical in the virtual world, right? I have to be able to provide this on my web page or my learning management system, but I can also put it into the chat box. I can also put it hyperlinked in my presentation. And I think we all agree. I have been on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Cisco WebEx since March, working across the United States. We lose power, we lose internet connection. There are all kinds of issues that will pop up. So this idea of redundancy is one of those great ways where we can optimize. It goes back into that planning, that you have multiple places where students can get this. So I'm going to go and put that into the chat box here. There we go. And we would do this with students, right? So if I'm working with students in Zoom or any other platform, and like we said, Google Teams, all these others have the chat platform, the redundancy piece is critical. Now, one little tip, if you already know this, great. If you don't, what we've learned is as people start to enter, if people show up late, you will have to post this again in the chat box so that they can get access to it. But what this does now is that every participant in my class that I'm teaching has access to everything. So if they do lose power or they go back, they can always go back. And again, I'm going to post this on my learning management system, whether I'm Schoology, Canvas, Google Classroom, regardless. So, and then again, I have to communicate that to the students, right? So we're going to talk about that transparency up front of sharing with kids, that if we lose power, if you get pulled out, if something drops, that you have a backup system, because that panic we have seen since March, that's one of those things that's causing students not to engage, is that if they lose power, that even if the teacher or instructor loses power or an internet connection, they're losing that. So some front loading with kids about where they can access and what happens if that should happen, we go with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation now. And again, emails, you can put questions in the QA box or chat box both. We'll get motivated and moving here. All right. All right, so we're going to go to the introduction. So initial conditions. So since March, my work along with Deb Cullen and Val Dickerson, we've been working with the Technical Assistance Program across PA. I've been with the state of Pennsylvania for 7 years now. And so as soon as March came and everybody went virtual, we immediately went into schools and centers across the state and simply shut up and listened. Where are you at? What do you want to do? So we almost started from ground zero here. So here's the 3 steps that we use when we initially are meeting with teachers to help kind of focus. I don't know about you, but since March, I am overloaded with Zoom or these virtual platforms. I'm overloaded with the number of tools that are out there for people to use. It's absolutely mind-boggling that there are so many apps and tools to use that it becomes very overwhelming. So what we did is when we meet with everybody, and this is to reflect and self-assess to identify your initial conditions. In other words, we're starting right off the bat with personalized coaching, one-on-one, because every teacher comes with a different set of skill set. They have different varying strengths with their learning management system, or maybe they need help with just that. Maybe they need help with tools, apps. So it really is important. And in the action agenda, I put 2 tools in there. One is a self-assessment survey, and the other one's a dashboard gauge. And you'll see more about that in a second. But what we're really trying to do is get teachers to take a breath, relax, stop. Let's see what we already know, what we already do, how can we build on that, and then what are you looking for? Some of the prereq work that has to be done, and I think, again, I know you all know this, is we are looking at the standards, right? In this year, we have no idea. We may be going virtual to hybrid to face-to-face. So prioritizing your program of study standards, that's an activity that we do first, right? We're reviewing the standards and we're looking at the language, right? Those standards that say identify, right? That have those lower DOK verbs or power words, so that we can actually segregate the standards into what do I teach? What actually can go virtual? What could I post on my learning management system and have them do at their time? How will I use that synchronous time? Okay, so this work has to be done. And again, most of the time it's been done because most teachers starting in March went right to this on, okay, what can I get accomplished between now and the end of the school year? And then over the summer, a lot of this work was done, but we have met with some teachers that are still in this process. And then we've really backed off in terms of the traditional lesson planning that we went to deconstruct your standards into topics or mini clusters for weekly planning. So rather than looking at a daily lesson plan, which most teachers are, we're tuned into that. We're doing daily lesson plans. With virtual, we have to start thinking more along a sequence, right? Because I may see my kids on Monday asynchronously. I might see them face-to-face on Tuesday. I might have synchronous on Wednesday. I can't begin to tell you the number of combinations of different sequences, but this has been helping teachers greatly, is to look at a weekly plan of, do I have them face-to-face, yes or no, and for how long? What assignments will I post synchronously during or asynchronously during that week? And how will I provide support for that? And then how will I use my synchronous time? So rather than look at individual asynchronous, synchronous, face-to-face, we're having teachers look at a weekly plan. And again, that could be 2 weeks. Again, every program of study is different, but it's really taking that second step there of prioritizing your standards and then putting them into topics and clusters. And that's important because then we're going to communicate that to the kids. That transparency of what are we trying to accomplish within a week. And that's where we're starting to help kids, and we map that out for kids, right? And we almost act as a pace car as teachers. we can provide that structure in our learning management system to say, on Tuesday, here are the expectations. You should be working on this, watch this video, etc. So this 3 initial conditions step is really, a lot of this has already been done. So we're moving forward, but I did want to include it in the presentation because we are still using it to a certain degree with teachers that have not gone through this, especially new teachers. With SRIB, when they do their self-assessment, we've made it a little easier, I believe, for teachers, is that we've got it in 5 focus areas. So teachers can choose what area they want to work with. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, engaging instruction is probably number 1 with every instructor, but we have a variety of people out there across Pennsylvania with different skill levels. So there are some teachers who have been using virtual successfully, and they're looking for aligned curriculum or continuous improvement. And then we have practices that go along with this. So I just wanted to put this in here. So when you look at these assessments, the self-assessment tools that we provide teachers across the state that we're working with, these are the topics that helps them formulate and kind of focus. Because once we can focus, then we can move forward with optimization. But right now, as you can expect, a lot of teachers are all over the place because they've got a million things going on. So establishing communication cycle, this is number 1 on the list. And I'm only sharing with you guys what we've been seeing across the state of Pennsylvania with teachers and students, is that communication cycle is critical. It is the lifeline. And because we went virtual so quick in March, some of that hasn't been established. And we're seeing it just like several schools that I've worked with in Pennsylvania so far, is that's a major issue for teachers, right? Is how am I getting students to actually communicate, log on, and participate? So we're going to simulate highly effective questioning processes. So we're going to simulate workplace communication. And I know many of you know this. I have brothers and sisters in business and industry. And as we speak, they are going through this as well. They've got employees working remote. They've got employees coming in part-time. And so really accentuating to students that during this time of virtual instruction, this is not something we're doing in hope that we get face-to-face someday. This is something we're going to do, and then you're going to walk out into a workforce where these types of skills now are going to be the highest demand. Because the people you work for now, you're going to have to know how to work remote. You're going to have to know how to take that student engagement and apply that in the workforce. So 3 modes of communication that we simulate with students is interpretive. Helping students, you have to know how to work on your own. You have to know how to manage, right? And that's been a struggle with students. Interpersonal communication, especially virtually. Using Zoom, Zoom chat, Q&A, breakout rooms, right? Those interpersonal, and how do you work with that? We use the Pennsylvania guidelines for occupational advisory committees is a tool that we use because they're hosting virtual meetings. So we've actually been able to use something from CTE to share with all teachers on, it's the same way you look at your synchronous learning. What am I trying to do when I meet with these kids synchronously? And that could be a variety of things. You might use it as office hours. You may use it to launch a unit, your synchronous time. You may use it to demonstrate. You may use it for direct instruction. So we're letting teachers know that when you develop these tools, you have to be very clear as what is the purpose of this synchronous session. I'm not just getting online with kids, I'm getting online with purpose. And then the presentational part is helping kids understand that to be engaged means they need to be able to present virtually. And so that's a common tool right there. So again, I put in some other things. This one, I love this video. This has been very positive working with teachers across the United States as well as Pennsylvania, is this idea of digital citizenship, that students don't realize that when we're in Zoom, I have a recording, but I can also download a transcript of the chat box and the private chat, right? And that we have these things. So establishing this type of digital citizenship. And what I like most about this video, it's the do's, not the don'ts. So it spins it to a more positive focus. I think you'll like this video on digital citizenship and share it with your students, because it really is taking a proactive approach of, if you want to be successful in communication and digital citizenship, here are the things you should be doing, rather than looking at it from a negative perspective. And again, there are other videos out there, but I really like this one. Establishing netiquette. That's an industry term there that they're using, that they'll now demand. So two things at the bottom there that have been very helpful: FAQs and what do we do if lose connection. So just like when I taught face-to-face, as we all do, you have procedures and protocols for tornado drills. You have them for lockdowns. So we are doing the same thing with students, is building a frequently asked question as well as protocols for them. And we're posting those on our learning management system. And then we're taking the time with students to say, listen, we're going to be virtual, we're going to be synchronous, things are going to happen. Rather than, oh, I lost connection, I don't have to be in class, we have a list of FAQs that think, what do you do if this happens? What do we do if this happens? By making this a document and posting it on your learning management system asynchronously, boy, it's really nice for students, because I can always go to this. I can always go and find answers to questions on my own. And as we all know, there's that urge to learn that employers look for. That's that initiative. The redundancy I already talked about. It is critical that whatever we're going to do with students virtually, that they can get to those tools, resources, et cetera, any time of day. And then we brought up this, and this is something I've used in the past, and if you've been in some of my presentations before, you've seen this, is that we bring in rubrics for this. So it's one thing to post netiquette and digital citizenship and train them. It's another thing to hold them accountable for it. And so I bring up this document all the time, because this is how employers evaluate your job performance. Well, now that we're in this world of digital and virtual, adherence to rules and regulations over here on the left, you can see, well, I tell you what, that I can bring into my classroom and say, listen, as an employee, you're going to be assessed on how well you follow these digital literacy protocols and tools. And so I can bring something like this in as an assessment tool to hold them accountable for that. Because I think what happens is, a lot of times these things get posted and then it doesn't get followed through, and the students may look at it and say, well, if you're not going to grade me on this or assess me, then why should I do it? But this brings it and connects it back to industry. And I think that's where we're getting the most leverage so far across the state with students to engage, is that you guys know as well as I do, if you're looking for a job today, you're gonna interview probably virtually. You're probably not going into their face-to-face. And so you have to be prepared to be able to talk about this. And I've even seen companies start to put in their interview questions. So what have you learned since we've gone into quarantine? What have you done at home? Have you taken any online courses? So even employers are starting to look at how they can question how people have used this time. And that's especially important for students, right? Okay. And then I found this, and you can find others, is the rubric for digital citizenship. And so again, this is the front loading. And again, even if I haven't done this yet, like yesterday at Fayette County Career Center, I have several teachers that are going to establish this now to add that in. And so you can start to see here that having a rubric for digital citizenship, so students can see what are the actual behaviors I need to be doing, and how does that go up there in terms of my success. I think that's really important. All right. The other thing we add is, I know Pennsylvania is really sharp with DOK, depth of knowledge, Webb's depth of knowledge, but here's where we're taking it to another level. How many of us are sharing this with students? And so one of the things we're doing is questioning is going to be so important now digitally, virtually. The way I ask questions, how I ask them to elicit student feedback. It's important that we share with kids the levels of DOK. And if you've read anything about DOK, what I love most about it, it's not that the question prompts get more difficult, they get more complex. And that's what we're trying to share with kids, is that when I question you, if I do something virtually, asynchronous, synchronous doesn't matter. But if I scaffold my questions, it's good to let kids know, why are you doing this? It's not that I'm going to make them more difficult, but thinking is important. If I ask you what your name is, that's a level response. You don't have to work very hard to answer that question. So I want kids to understand that the questioning increases with complexity, because scaffolding is going to be important. We're going to have very little time to assess students and circle back and get feedback. So scaffolding questions to find out where they're at and what obstacles they're hitting and where you need to maybe reteach is going to be really important. So we've been sharing with students what DOK is. And here you go. There's a nice circle document for students as well as teachers. The other thing that we've been sharing is providing student structure for virtual engagement. So one of the issues is when we get kids, a lot of times it's silence. How do we get kids to actually speak and provide feedback? And this is just one example here. I like this. I use this across the board, but we have kids use these prompts as part of engagement. So rather than just say, you kids need to talk more, you need to ask each other's questions, we can give them a structure to start off with. And this is pretty obvious. I mean, I always like this, the first one, I like that because it validates someone's work. And so, hey, I like that you've done so-and-so. Have you considered is a prompt where students can offer something additional to the conversation. And then I wonder if is that constructive feedback. But this type of protocol here, something this simple, is what we're going to have to post. We're going to have to share to take time with kids and go through this to say, when we're working virtually, it's just not sit and get. And so I will help you with 3 prompts that you can use virtually, but we can also do this face to face. That's why I said in my presentation, all these tools, regardless of teaching, are just good. Whether it's face to face, virtual, it does not matter. They're universal. All right, so the next phase we're sharing with teachers is a planning process. So I think research shows it's about 3 times as long to plan for a virtual lesson as it would be for face-to-face. And so how we plan for lessons is going to actually change drastically. So this is something I found, and I hyperlinked this in the document. This is something that Harvard University has been using, because universities, post-secondary institutions have done a great job of figuring out what success is virtually. What is a blended model? How do I optimize? And I just thought this was pretty funny. It's the laundry test. This instructor from Harvard asked his student, when do you decide whether you're going to pay attention, which is an obstacle or a problem we're seeing with students across, right? Is that asynchronous, that the teacher might be online, ready to field questions, and kids are signing in and disappearing for the rest of the day or the rest of the period. And so actually getting to students, right, when I'm trying to decide, I ask myself, is this class, could I attend while folding laundry? If it is, I watch the recording of the class. If no, I attend the live session. So I think it's one of those where we have to start thinking with teachers, right? When I plan, what makes them attend a live session? So that's where the Mentimeter, and I'm going to share another tool with you, simple tool to start off with. Mentimeter, Kahoot, I know does the same thing or similar things. That requires you to be engaged. You have to provide some feedback. And then what I can do with Mentimeter is follow up. So once the data is produced and everybody's looking at the graphs that you saw in terms of what you rank certain qualities of a job, I can now put feedback questions in for the chat box. I can have them choose someone within chat and do a virtual chat. And so now it becomes you need to be here. You can't just listen to the recording because the learning is taking place while we're actually engaged. So I just thought that was interesting. So prereq work, We already talked about planning the standards. Topics versus whole units. So as you know, I know there's a major stress among teachers across the state, how am I going to teach everything? And so this idea of planning for units, what we used to do with face-to-face, has to shift into smaller bites, week or 2-week cycles. And then the other thing we've seen across the state is consistency with your documents. So stick with Google or Microsoft Suite. So for example, if I'm in the Google world, we have seen teachers that they're posting notes, activities using Google Docs. They will use Google Slides for procedures, for protocols. They'll use Google Forms for feedback, checking for understanding. They'll use Google Sites for self-contained projects that you may get posted on there. But what happens now is that the students start to build an understanding that, oh, every time the teacher gives me notes, it's in Google Docs. Every time the teacher goes through a process, it's in slides. They start to use that suite of tools for that. What I'm learning as a consultant is that Microsoft has its version, right? Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. Microsoft Sway is something I've been playing with recently that is similar to Google Sites. And then OneNote has been a popular tool. So keeping consistent and not going from one platform to another, the consistency is helpful, especially at the beginning. Once teachers have established a process, a system, then what's been happening is they can jump out and say, well, I do like some Google and Microsoft, and maybe they can fold some of that in. But I think for the students, and I had a teacher say this to me yesterday, processing time for students, right? That time to process. So if all your notes are always in docs, if your procedures are always in slides, it helps with students processing. And now we can build that cycle of communication. Okay, so from the post-secondary, I thought this was very useful in helping teachers. It helps them with that lesson planning, right? Design asynchronous material in a way that allows you to collect information about your students that you can then use to conduct better synchronous sessions. And so it gives, now this is just a basic model, and of course, depending on what teacher I'm working with, they can modify this, tweak this, but it at least gives every teacher a basic foundation to start off with, right? That I'm going to post assignments, and then maybe those assignments asynchronous are varying in length, short cycle, stuff that's posted and maybe due at the end of the day. Medium cycle performance on asynchronous, where it's due, you assign it Monday, it's due Friday. And then that extended asynchronous assignment, which might be a project where even though you're doing other things along the line, it's posted Monday and it's due a month from now. So showing kids how you're going to post those types of sessions. Step 2, you review student information from the asynchronous engagement. So that's where the teacher's looking at what they're doing, feedback through that communication cycle. And then 3 is the live session, where that live session could be based on the student, right? It could be based on just open-ended time for students to ask clarifying questions. That's been something that a lot of teachers have said that that's where their synchronous time is getting used, is that they're posting the assignments, then they meet synchronously, and students have a chance to ask clarifying questions. But that time synchronously could also be a teacher demonstration. It could be teacher direct instruction. It could be guided practice, which is something that we've been working with a lot of teachers of how do you facilitate guided practice in a 1-hour Zoom session, if you will. And then here's some information you can collect from your students. So this gets teachers started with what I can collect, right? What percentage of them engaged in the asynchronous work? What parts of the material have they completed or not completed? And we'll even talk about that later on with accountability, that a lot of teachers are using spreadsheets and qualification cards to post all the assignments so that students can check what they're doing, what they haven't done, but also the teacher and parents or guardians can see what's been done, what's not. And then what mental models or misconceptions? I call this the OMGs, right? Is that when I start to look at asynchronous work, I'm looking at what misconceptions they have, et cetera. Another tool we've been sharing with teachers is the cost benefit analysis for technology. Okay. And I agree with this. Since March, working for SRAB, I have probably been exposed to 150 different tools. Some of them overlap, some of them have similar features to others, and it is absolutely overwhelming. So what we've done is worked with teachers to it's just like shopping for a tool at Home Depot. Stop, because it's easy to get caught up in. I just saw a session on ClassKick the other day. Really cool, really nice tool. I don't know if it works for me if I was teaching math, right? I don't know if it works for me if I'm going to teach CTE or what I'm trying to do. So we always ask the teacher, what are you trying to accomplish? What is it that you want done? Does the tool meet state and district guidelines? That's important. I've worked with several districts across the state where there are certain tools that are not allowed, right? And so we have to make sure that if that's the tool that you like, for example, if I like Mentimeter, but my district doesn't allow that, is there another tool that does the same thing that does do that? So those are some things that we're helping teachers kind of walk through to make sure. What features does it have? So I will share with you, Edpuzzle has been another phenomenal tool that has crossed over to, but Edpuzzle has a lot of different features. The one feature though that teachers seem to gravitate towards when they get into that is, oh, I can upload a video and I can embed questions, comments, and voiceovers. And so you start to see that sometimes these tools have more than one feature, but I only need that tool for this one thing. So having teachers go through a cost benefit analysis of which tools to use, right, is really important. And then how long will it take me to learn or the students to learn? So the two that I shared with you, we did a survey at the beginning with Mentimeter and Edpuzzle. These two overwhelmingly, I can say, have been two great tools to get teachers started with optimizing their time with virtual instruction and assessment, because they're less than 5 minutes to learn. It's very easy to build these and plan them and save. They're free. And it opens up the door, goes back. I can start to check for student understanding. It forces students to put out responses. And that can be verbally, it can be through their voice, a lot of different ways. So just two simple tools. And like I said, I'm meeting teachers across your state that are far beyond this. They're using much more sophisticated tools because maybe they've been using these types of tools in their instruction prior to COVID. All right. So with Menti.com, I just wanted to show you real quick. It's easy to make new presentations. The free version of this only allows so many, so you may have to delete. But what I really wanted to point out was this. Here's the types of questions that you can choose from. So now what we're having teachers do is look at the types of questions and look at their standards. So if I'm trying to get kids to answer certain questions about certain standards in my curriculum, these questions, an open-ended question might be better than a word cloud. Scales might be better than multiple choice, ranking, the Q&A, as well as the quiz competition, where you can have kids, you can build a sequence of questions and they're competing against each other. So I have some teachers that are starting to get into this because the fun of competition between students has been something that's engaged them even more. And then I also like the fact that you can add content slides. So I could have a slide with a video, have the kids watch this video clip, and then follow it up with a Mentimeter question slide that's on using scales. And then I can maybe go to the next slide and put in a picture, have the kids watch the picture. So what I think this type of tool is allowing teachers to do is sequence questions, but also embed visual aids, videos, podcasts, right? Pictures, all kinds of cool things that set them up. And again, I say this with all due respect. This is where students now are starting to go, I can't do my laundry here. I actually have to engage and provide something. I have to think. This teacher's making me watch a video, and then I'm ranking which of these characteristics are the most important to the question. So threw that in there. Edpuzzle. Again, I just wanted to take a few seconds to share with you. I fell upon this myself. I had never used Edpuzzle, but back in March, I was going to build a fire pit. So I was on YouTube TV. I see now YouTube has a button for Edpuzzle with it. So it's already synced. So you can upload any video and immediately go in. And if you look at this toolbar down here, these little teardrops are where I paused and added questions or comments. So I can play this video and then I can pause it, put in questions, comments, and that serves two purposes. I could use videos for note taking, where the video is on content that I'm teaching, and then I can do comments. So it'll pause and I can comment and maybe add something to the video that's missing or clarify something, and I can just use it for note taking. However, I can also add open-ended and multiple choice questions with this. It also offers the teacher the ability to compress the video. Maybe you only want to show one portion, 2 minutes of a video today. That has led to something that I'm having fun with teachers across Pennsylvania, actually across the United States, is video layering, where teachers are finding a really good video and they're having the students go through the video the first time with a certain lens of questions. Then they'll watch the video again and there's a different lens of questions. And then a third time and there's a different lens of questions. What happens is the students watch this video 3 times, but each time they're watching it, they're being asked different questions from a different lens. We have found that that has really helped with processing, because the students are watching the same video, but each time they watch it, maybe they're looking for these aspects. Maybe on the next time they watch it, they're looking for vocabulary. Maybe the next time they're looking for procedures or troubleshooting. So there's a lot of different ways this can be used, but this has been something, Mentimeter and Edpuzzle have been the 2 tools since March, or similar tools to these, right? Because I know PlayPosit is similar to Edpuzzle. I also know that Kahoot, and there's some other ones that are similar to Mentimeter. But these 2 types of tools have seemed to be the tools that are getting teachers comfortable with making sure that the time that they're using online is maximized, that they're getting student feedback, they're getting a litmus test, they're checking for understanding, they're assessing. And that's the hardest part, I think, right? Is that it's easy to post assignments for kids to do. It's another thing to find out, do they have questions? Where are they at? Can they do this? Can they do that? And so these are 2 starter tools. The student accountability. So why digital work journals? Now, I've been doing digital work journals across Pennsylvania for about 3 years now. But it has become so relevant now because now students need to start to, it's almost important that they keep a journal with all of these things that they're doing, because these evidences are what they can use in a job interview. And that's where we're really going with this with kids, is that when your teachers create these virtual lessons for you to do, are you capturing these pieces in a journal so that you could use in an interview? Because as I just said earlier in the beginning, the current work industry out there, you have to be able to work digitally. They're going to be looking for these tools. They've already changed some of their interview questioning to find out what we've been doing as human beings during quarantine. Are we doing online? How are we navigating? Can I do this kind of thing? My brother works for Best Buy as a regional salesman. One of the issues they're dealing with right now is all their sales staff has to learn how to sell a TV set on Zoom. Well, how do you do that? And how do you handle facilitating Q&A with someone digitally? So these work journals, these digital work journals have more than one purpose, but we've seen that now that we're in a virtual setting, it almost amplifies the need for students to start to collect the evidences of these lessons that teachers are providing to showcase their skills. The other one is a job skills matrix, kind of a qualification card. Teachers have been coming up with a model of this aligned with their standards so that they can manage where students are at in the learning process, what activities they've done and document, but also the student can have a copy of this as well as parent and guardian. And this is it seems very simple, but the teachers that have implemented a system that once a week, every student pulls up their qualification card and finds out what they've done, what they haven't done, and that starts to help with student engagement and also to keep them on track. And then the last thing I'll share with you is one of the things that, because kids are learning at different paces to begin with, and that gets amplified virtually, sometimes it's beneficial to offer extension assignments for students that finish early, right? Or if there's some downtime. Well, the career education and work standards for Pennsylvania address these 4 bullets here: career awareness, prep, career acquisition, career retention. And so this document here that I've shared with you has a whole handbook of guided questions, activities, and projects that students can do that allow them to investigate all the different aspects of industry. And by the way, this is the most missed question in a job interview is, do you have any questions for us? And employers are telling us that nobody comes prepared, and it's because they haven't taken the time to go in to look at different industries. So this document provides some nice extension activities that not only align to your career education work standards, but also serve as a point of student engagement, right? Because if I'm a teacher and I can show kids that the stuff I'm doing them will help them get a job, will help them be a better interviewer, will help them get a scholarship for post-secondary, then I start to see more engagement. And so again, I've hyperlinked everything for you on that. So I'm gonna stop here. I've got a few minutes left for some questions. My email address is here. Like I said, we've been working with multiple schools and centers across Pennsylvania, and I can give you specifics as to how each of them is customizing this work. Because like I said, that at the beginning, we go in and do a personalized view of every school or center. We talk to the principals and directors and find out, how do we really optimize our support for coaching you virtually? And like I said, I have not been in 2 schools or centers yet that have had the same issues. They're all different, and something to think about there. I am going to share 2 opportunities for you. SREB will have its Nashville conference, Making Schools Work conference in July in Nashville, and I hyperlinked that for you as well if you're interested. And then we just completed planning this session. This is for tech centers. We have a Nationals Leaders Forum that will be in February. I hyperlinked both of these for you if you're looking for other opportunities to gain more access. I will tell you that the work that SREB has been doing across this summer with multiple states and places is all on supporting teachers virtually. And the last piece of that I think is really important. I just asked every teacher yesterday in Fayette, what tools are you doing virtually today that you could see yourself using from now on? So, right, I'm getting teachers to look at their standards and say, wow, you know, I never taught this virtually before, but I kind of have this system set up and it works. And I think that's the beginning of pushing teachers into the flipped classroom, right? If I start to put more things asynchronous and have some synchronous opportunity to kind of follow up and circle back, then that provides more time in school. It's the whole laundry issue. You come to school now and we can do more projects. We can do more hands-on. And so we're looking at those enduring skills for teachers because, like, I think we would all agree, I have no idea what the future is going to look like, but I have to tell you, I'm going to make sure that I am prepared to deliver asynchronous, synchronous, virtual instruction because we just don't know. Is there another COVID 5 years later? I hope not, but I think we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. All right.
Okay, we do have one question in the
Sure.
Q&A, and it is, can you provide any guidance to teachers on how much work to assign students in an online environment?
Great question. And so the amount of work, a lot of that has been designed by the district. So, but not always. So I'll give you an example. We work with Octorara School District outside Philadelphia there. And they had specific guidelines, the district, as to how many hours of work or homework you could give each student per day. So I would first start there with your district to see if they have constraints. But I think, can you provide guidance on teachers on how much work to assign students? Right now, what's happened is we're providing some of the work for them, and then that's where that synchronous is based on your synchronous assessment. When you're circling back and talking to students, we're actually figuring out, well, how much can they accomplish? So I think it's okay to go big because you can always back off. But actually, this is going to be an individualized answer for each teacher, right? And the program of study you're teaching. I wish I could give you a nice hard number and say, 2 hours of work each night, but there are more variables to that. And I think that's what we're learning all together as a group is if I post this much information and by Thursday, I'm seeing that the students aren't accomplishing it, I need to go and figure out why they're not accomplishing it. Is it just they're not doing the work, or are there some kinds of obstacles? So I wish I could give you a more concrete answer, but I will say this, that in Columbus, Ohio, and in Octorara and a few others, the ballpark number has been about 4 hours a week per class. How that translate, I'm not exactly sure. But it's a great question. I wish I could give you more concrete on that. But if you'd like to email me, we could talk more specifically on that. But I would definitely start with your district first to see if they have any of that listed out to you or guidelines. It should be about 70 asynchronous, 30 synchronous. That's where the research numbers comes in if you're looking at how much asynchronous time versus synchronous time.